Doctors. I'm Chad, this is Albert, and we are the Bourbon Doctors. Today, we're going to hit a topic that we get asked about all the time. Different questions. Bourbon for beginners. We get people that we work with in different areas saying, hey, what is bourbon? Is it whiskey?
Yeah.
Why is whiskey bourbon? Is bourbon whiskey? Here's what I'll tell you. Bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon. And it starts with a mash bill of grain. And bourbon has to be at least 51% corn. And the more corn, the sweeter.
Sweet.
It doesn't have a whole
Sweet. Then you add rye, you can add barley, you can add wheat, different things that will give it different flavors. To me, the rye tends to be spicier. Wheat tends to be a little sweeter. In fact, if they do more corn, it's more sweet too.
Sweet with just a spice finish.
It's sweet.
It's sweet. Still just nutty sweet.
Then, after the mash is made, it is allowed to ferment and then distilled. And there can be multiple different ways to distill it. At that point, once the distillate is made, it is put into a charred oak barrel, charred on the inside, and the char is to impart some of those flavors of the wood as the barrel ages. Bourbon has to be aged for a minimum of 4 years in the charred oak barrel, and then it's poured out. Am I boring out of here or what?
There are a lot of people that are doing these episodes about, how to do bourbon for beginners, and you know what? A lot of them are just that. Boring lectures about what makes bourbon. So I think, let's do something a little different and say, how should you begin drinking bourbon? If you're not a bourbon drinker, what are the things that you should be doing? How should you start? What bottles should you drink? What drinks should you drink? Should you go right to, hey,
you don't want to
barrel
go right to
proof?
what we do.
What was that?
You don't want to go right to what we do at night.
No.
Just
Wait, that sounded weird, dude.
That did sound weird. But you just put bourbon in a glass is pretty much what I do.
I drink a lot of neat bourbon, but I'll tell you what, that's not how I started out.
By neat, he means
neat.
just bourbon.
Just
It
bourbon.
doesn't mean it's neat.
No.
I
mean, it's kind of neat.
It is neat. It's a word for it.
But I started out as a Scotch drinker and then switched to bourbon, now about 10 years ago. Chad, I know you've kind of always been a bourbon drinker.
I started, I think, the way a lot of people do. You start out drinking like a Beam and Coke, and that was 30 years ago.
Yep.
Or more. Your tastes evolve with time. You go to things like Jack and Ginger Ale, or Beam, or Bourbon and Ginger Ales, just to kind of keep it a little
lemonade,
sweeter.
or some other cocktail.
In the winter, apple cider, and
Sure.
throw some bourbon in it. And then you just evolve, I think, with time to where you're like, hey, I want to try again an old fashioned. You're like, wow, that was really good. And
So if you're out there and you go, all right, I want to try bourbon.
yeah.
Here's what we would say to do. Get a bottle of bourbon. Start with something relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
And start with something that is relatively low proof. Right? Proof is just basically the alcohol content times 2. And, bourbons run the gamut from 80 proof to 130, 140.
Yeah, we've had 130.
If you're a beginner, don't start out
start at
over
130.
100.
Yeah.
Do
just
not
don't
do
start
that.
over
It
100.
will burn. You will hate it. Now, later on, you might like it.
Yeah.
But to begin, I'd get an 80 proof, 90 proof bottle.
Like what?
Like maybe
about-
some Four Roses.
This is 80 proof. Very florally, somewhat fruity.
I would agree. A very floral and
bourbon.
fruity bourbon. And it's a great mixer for things like bourbon and lemonade.
Yep. Perfect for bourbon lemonades. Perfect for if you like a fruit, like if you like peach or strawberries, something that's really easy to do. Grab your shaker, put a little ice in it, put some preserves, peach preserves, strawberry preserves, whatever you like, and then pour a little bourbon in there, maybe a little sweetener like a simple syrup or something. Shake it up and pour it over ice.
If you're putting preserves, I bet you won't even need the simple
I don't
syrup.
think you'll need a sweetener, but just a little. We call it a peach smash.
Yeah, one of my favorites is a peach smash in the summertime. It's just a spoon of peach preserves, an ounce or two of bourbon, a little bit of lemon, shake it up, pour it over a big tall glass of ice.
It's very good.
Not a big tall glass, but
easy.
like a full glass of ice.
And you can do that with any fruit.
You can do that with just about any fruit. It's really delicious in the summertime, and it's a good intro into bourbon. Another good bourbon to start out with?
I would say Maker's Mark. You know, this is 90 proof, a little bit
A little bit
stronger.
stronger.
And you can tell it's a little darker. What are we getting Four Roses for now? About 20, 21 bucks. The maker's mark's about 24. 90 proof. It, to me, has got a little bit more spice to it.
I
To
mean,
me,
more
it's
than a Four Roses, I would say. Yeah.
But it's still very good, very cheap, low proof. Mixes very well with just about everything that we just said. In addition,
Ginger ale is a great mixer.
ginger ale,
Ginger beer. If you like a Moscow Mule,
Bourbon Mule.
make a Bourbon Mule. Mm-hmm. Kentucky Mule. There's
Do
lots
you know
of
what a
different
mule
names
is?
for
If
it.
you don't know what a mule is simply a copper glass. You put some ice, you put some bourbon, you put ginger beer and lime juice. Okay? It's fantastic. You can garnish it with a little lime. Very nice drink.
All right. So after you've kind of played with your bourbon cocktails and your bourbon drinks, maybe you want to then move on to maybe bourbon and rocks.
Maybe. What do you think about this? For these two, maybe for that as a starter.
I would say both. So this is Old Forrester. Now this is 100 proof. I was too lazy to go to the store to pick up the 86 proof,
86.
the blue label. That's a great starter bourbon. The 100's not bad either. They're both
one's
$25,
$20.
$22. They have really great. It's a nice sweet bourbon. It has a nice vanilla caramel kind of flavoring to it. Throw it in a glass just like this with a couple cubes of ice, and then you're on to bourbon on the rocks. Mm-hmm. And it's a nice way it's a gateway from going from your sweeter cocktail to just drinking bourbon.
I think this is better on the rocks than that, but I like that.
You know,
that's taste.
Buffalo Trace. We've mentioned this before on the show. It's a great distillery overall. This is kind of one of their entry level products. Again, you should be able to find it for $25 or so. Around here, unfortunately, it's getting to be $30, $32 for a bottle, which is maybe a little bit more than you should pay for Buffalo Trace. Mm-hmm. But again, it's a great bourbon to drink on the rocks. And then after that, it's time to go neat. One
of my mixers, and
you can mix another one.
Is this, and if you want to go neat, I think you can. I think that's an evolving taste. Like you could drink any one of these neat.
I would also say though that, I would much rather drink my Buffalo Trace or my Old Forester neat than my Yellow Label. Mm-hmm. Hate to say it, but the Four Roses Yellow Label, to me that's a mixing bourbon. Mm-hmm. I'll throw it in some cocktails. I'll throw it in some mixes. If I'm gonna drink something neat, it's not gonna be Four Roses.
So, quick example. We were talking about all this
Never
stuff.
waits for me to sit
We're
down.
just going to make one
Never
quick because it really doesn't take long.
No.
You're sitting around. What we did here, we got a couple glasses with some ice. Threw a little mint in.
And then
threw a little bourbon in. This is Blueberry Lemonade.
A little Blueberry Lemonade. And there you go. Now you've got a great cocktail for the summertime, hanging out outside, enjoying the sunshine. So there's a lot of information we covered. What bourbon is, what bottles you can buy, what drinks you can make, and we'll put a lot of the stuff in the comments too in terms of what the drink recipes are, what the bourbon bottles are that we're talking about today.
Yeah, we may even put it on our website if we get one of them.
Someday maybe.
But hey, we made these. These are wonderful.
Bourbon and lemonade.
Bourbon and lemonade. Just something
Cheers.
with a little mint in the summer when you're sitting outside. Remember, subscribe us.
Bourbon is for drinking.
Cheers, everyone.